Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Survivor Revive. On today's show, I will be chatting with EFT tapping expert Brad Yates. Brad is recognized as one of the top teachers of the emotional freedom technique, which is EFT, or also known as tapping, which is a quick, simple, effective method for overcoming fear and relieving stress. Brad has taught tapping to CEOs, professional athletes, award-winning actors, and also hosts a YouTube channel where his tapping exercises have been viewed over 35 million times. It's very impressive. Brad is also the author of the best-selling children's book, The Wizard's Wish, co-author of the bestseller Freedom at Your Fingertips, and was also featured in the documentary The Tapping Solution. Welcome to Survivor Revive, Brad.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. You and I have chatted in the past about how I found out about tapping, and you, of course. I was listening to the Vulnerability Rocks podcast, which is hosted by Emma K. Bell. Emma has been on our podcast several times. She's done a lot of work for survivors, not only with what she does, but being on our show as well. And when I was watching the podcast, so I know she does an audio, but she also does a visual version. I was watching it on YouTube. And as I was watching it, you both had walked through a tapping exercise, and Emma had so much emotion that came up, and it was actually quite beautiful to watch. It seemed like it was a very emotional, almost spiritual experience that she was having. So of course I was immediately intrigued. And I ran over to your YouTube channel to check it out, see what it was all about. And you guys, Brad has so many exercises on there, which is incredible. And there's exercises for everything you can possibly imagine. So the way that I handled it was I was like, okay, what am I feeling right now? I had a lot of anxiety. So I just went in, I searched for anxiety, and I found a tapping exercise, sat down with it, went through the tutorial, and I felt amazing afterwards. I felt very grounded. I felt calm. I felt like my anxiety was reined back in, and I felt better equipped to go out into my day. So, I explored this technique a few times after, and it has since become a part of my self-care plan and kind of one of my go-tos when I need some grounding. So I was really excited when Brad agreed to this interview and to come on and introduce the tapping technique and his work to our community.
I'm always grateful for the opportunity to share this because it is such a simple way to downregulate stress and all of the distressing things that can come up, especially
Mhm.
from past events that are not fully resolved in the body. And having this process that has this somatic component of tapping on these points on our bodies, it helps us to process stuff in such a profound way. So I'm, as I said, I'm grateful for the opportunity to share this work with your audience.
Well, I think that's a really great place to get started. For anyone who's out there who's never heard of tapping, what is EFT, or better known as tapping?
Yeah. So this is a process based originally on acupuncture. So for thousands of years in
Oh,
Chinese medicine, they have said there's a flow of energy through the body along these pathways called meridians. And when this energy is flowing naturally, we experience our natural state of health and well-being, physically and emotionally. And when this energy gets stuck, we don't feel so good. So in traditional acupuncture, the doctor would stick needles in these key points to stimulate that healthy flow of energy. And a psychologist named Dr. Roger Callahan back around 1980 found that by tapping these points while working with a client on a water phobia, he was able to release not only the physical experience of the knot in the stomach she got whenever she thought about water, but her phobia went away. So he started experimenting with different clients, and some of the results were faster, some were slower, and some he tapped different points for different issues. And then one of his first students, a gentleman named Gary Craig, found that just by tapping these 8 major points in a row, he was getting the same great results, clearing out these energy blockages. And we have modern research showing how this is a profound process for downregulating stress. We have chemical studies showing that the stress hormone cortisol is dramatically reduced when we're doing the tapping. We have fMRI studies showing the brain activity and how that changes through the tapping. So it's really exciting to see this growing body of scientific evidence validating this process.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the cortisol levels because I know that that is a big thing that survivors of abuse deal with. Can you
Mhm.
explain what that means and what cortisol, like how cortisol can affect the body when it comes to something like PTSD and how tapping could regulate that or help regulate that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as our brain developed through history, we had the amygdala, which is in the limbic part of our brain, looks for danger. And when we perceive danger, it responds by putting us into fight or flight, or fight, flight, freeze. And one of the things it does is it releases different hormones like adrenaline and cortisol that are designed to put the energy where we need it to either fight or to run. It takes it away from the prefrontal cortex where our rational thinking is. It's like if we are perceiving a saber-toothed tiger, we need to run right now. We don't want to be sitting there thinking about, what shade of tan is the fur on this? We don't want to be thinking about things. We want to be taking action. So, but that part of us doesn't necessarily perceive, can't really tell the difference between a real physical threat or just a threat to our ego. So, in terms of surviving abuse, we may perceive things based on a situation that was actually harmful to us. We may now be hypervigilant, looking for things that could be potentially upsetting, which then throws us into that state, pumping cortisol through our body, which again, really good thing if we're trying to outrun a saber-toothed tiger. But in situations that are not actually harmful, there are a number of ill effects of that, particularly in our digestive system. It slows down our digestive system, and so we don't process nutrients as well. We can gain weight, and there are a number of unfortunate effects of these things happening, of the way that we have a stress response in our body when it's not absolutely appropriate.
I found out about my own cortisol issue and it was because of that. It was because of weight gain, but it was specific weight gain. It wasn't overall weight gain. It was
Mm-hmm.
carrying lower belly fat, carrying fat around your back bra strap in that area.
Yeah.
And that's how I found out about cortisol. So how would does tapping help regulate that overall?
Well, so the tapping has been shown to downregulate the stress response such that the cortisol production slows down or stops to
Wow.
normal levels. And so not only can we use that in the moment of experiencing stress and allowing ourselves to calm down and recognize, okay, I am not actually in physical danger right now, but also overall, I recommend tapping on a daily basis because to me, it's energy hygiene. We have physical hygiene like brushing our teeth and taking a shower. Most of us do that on a daily basis as just a matter of maintenance. We don't usually wait until people around us are holding their nose and then say, right, now it's time for me to get clean. But with stress, most of us don't have any way of dealing with that. It just builds up and builds up until there are unfortunate consequences, oftentimes like the buildup of cortisol in our body in ways that we're not consciously aware of. And so having a way of down regulating that allows us to get into a healthier state of norm in terms of how we're feeling emotionally and physically.
So this not only helps in the moment. So if you are feeling exceptionally stressed out
Yeah.
and you know that it may be because of cortisol, you can use it at that moment. But you also recommend maybe throwing it into your regular routine, like you would meditation or yoga or something like that.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. It creates a healthier state of being.
You mentioned too that it is similar to acupuncture, and can you explain a little bit more about the different meridians and what they represent? And is there a method, like if you were doing a tapping session for anxiety versus, I don't know, shame, would the meridians be the tapping points be the same? Would the motions be the same? How does that all work?
Yeah, interesting you bring that up. When Roger Callahan first was developing this work, he did come up with different algorithms for different issues. So for shame, he might tap 3 different points in a particular sequence, but for a phobia, he might tap 3 different points in different sequence. And one of his first students, Gary Craig, had gotten his degree in engineering from Stanford. And so, thinking like an engineer, he said, well, let's see if we can simplify this process. And there were 8 points that we generally use based on 8 of the different meridians. There are meridians and meridian points all over the body. But Dr. Callahan, through his research, had come up with these 8 points that he was using on these major meridians. And each of these points, each of the meridians that he uses are associated with different organs of the body and associated with different emotions. Gary's thought was, well, if there's only 8 points, it's almost quicker to tap through all of the points rather than trying to figure out which points to tap. And there's no harm in tapping a point that might not be relevant to that particular issue. And sometimes, because things are so interrelated, tapping all the points can be more beneficial anyway. So that's why in the EFT process, we are tapping through these points, and it's just going down in a straight line through the body, just to simplify it.
What do all of the different meridians represent?
So the emotions that are generally associated with the points that we're using, the eyebrow is associated with fear and sadness and trauma. Side of the eye with anger and resentment. Under the eye is fear. Under the nose, embarrassment and humiliation. Under the mouth, shame and guilt. Collarbone is also associated with fear. Under the arm is associated with low self-esteem. And on the top of the head, several of the meridians cross over there. So it's associated with a number of different things. And I have a video called Be Set Free Fast, based on the work of Dr. Larry Nims, who is another student of Roger Callahan's, where I use just a standard process of mentioning these different emotions. But I always say to folks, don't get too caught up in that, because you may be saying, oh, I feel a lot of anger right now, but I just feel like tapping this point, which is associated with shame. So don't be thinking, oh, I have to tap this point if it's anger. Allow yourself to be aware of what goes on. And again, as we tap through all the points, so many of these things are interrelated. So even though it may be presenting itself as anger, there might be a lot of shame underneath that. There might be a lot of sadness underneath that. So there's a lot of benefits to tapping through all the points. But do go with your gut instinct if you feel like stopping on a particular point.
Would that be a good indication that something is going on with something particular? Like if like I said earlier, like this spot, it felt right. It felt good. Yeah. Would that mean that there's something going on internally that I'm struggling with that correlates to that meridian?
Likely. And as I said, that point is associated with fear. And I don't like to say negative emotions. I think all emotions are part of the human experience. They all have benefits. You were saying earlier, you may get triggered and go into a place of depression. Mm-hmm. These are ways that our body tells us something needs to be taken care of. It's like a smoke detector. Mm-hmm. That alarm goes off to let us know that there's some smoke detected someplace, or that the battery needs to be changed. So it's really good to have that. When that goes off, we don't say, oh, I hate that. That's such a negative thing to have in my house.
Yeah.
But we want to pay attention to it and do something about it. What happens with these uncomfortable emotions is so often we get stuck in it. Oh, now I'm just depressed and I have to just feel depression. It's like, no, my body is trying to tell me there's something that needs to be dealt with. And it may be a misunderstanding. It may be that the battery needs to be changed, or, how often has the smoke detector gone off in our house because we're cooking something and it's given off just a little bit more smoke than normal, but there's no real danger. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes we experience these emotions where it's not necessary. So the tapping allows us to check it out and say, okay, everything's okay. This isn't necessary. And fear, there's a certain amount of fear underneath all of the other uncomfortable emotions: our anger, our sadness, our depression, our shame, and our guilt. There's something fearful saying, I need to experience this.
Is there any particular This might be kind of an odd question, but is there any particular environment that someone should be in? Should it be a quiet environment or the same that you would as something for like meditation? Or the reason why I ask that is because sometimes something like a trigger will happen and you can really be anywhere when that happens. Is there any specific method in those terms?
Now, that's one of the things that I love about EFT is that it can be done virtually anywhere. Now, you may want to do the tapping in a more subtle way, like just holding your fingers on the point and or rubbing them, as opposed to tapping, because in certain environments, if there are people around, if they don't know about tapping, they may give you some funny looks. I look forward to the day when tapping is so well known that you could be out there on the street and tapping, and someone else might go, "Oh, hey, thanks for the reminder. I've got some
Yeah.
anxiety going on right now," and no one will blink. But at this point, you may want to duck into the bathroom to do it out of sight. There are times where I'll do it where other people are around and I just don't worry about it. It's like if something's bothering me, I'll say, yeah, I don't owe it to these people to try to look more normal and hang on to what's bothering me at this moment.
Yeah, well, I live in New York and I'm on the subway all the time. So, I mean, I feel like anything goes.
Yeah,
No one's going to look
exactly.
at me. If anything, they're going to avoid eye contact.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Or normalize it.
obviously,
Just we were talking about the video I shot this morning about normalizing conversations about mental health. And the more of us
yeah.
that normalize this, and certainly on the subway would be a great place for people to be tapping.
Absolutely. I don't know that anyone would want to initiate the conversation around it, but I think they may
Yet.
watch. Yet. We're working on that.
We're looking for some brave volunteers to.
Well, I have a very, very brave community. So maybe
Yes.
they'll be tapping on the subway in no time.
Yes.
But speaking of the community, as we talked, the vast majority of our community are survivors of abuse or survivors of assault. We also have a lot of allies that are here. I'm really curious in terms of the survivor experience, specifically in terms of what we go through and the aftermath of what we go through in terms of PTSD and dealing with triggers. And what are some of the health benefits that are specific to the survivor experience that one can get out of tapping?
Well, there are so many possible benefits. Obviously, in terms of downregulating the stress response and lowering things like cortisol, there are physical health benefits. Stress either causes or worsens most, if not all, of the issues that we face, both physical and emotional. So having a simple tool to downregulate stress is beneficial in so many ways. Allowing ourselves to feel safer in the world allows ourselves to go out and experience more of the wonderful things that are out there. Because of the abuse that you may have experienced, it's like, well, okay, it's not safe for me to put myself out there. Yes, I'm going to miss out on a lot of wonderful things, but I have to do that in order to protect myself from the awful things that I know firsthand are out there. And as we can allow ourselves to clear the stress around that and recognize that I can make good choices without panicking. I can be smart without being fearful, just like we are with crossing the street. We can look for the turn, we can look for the walk sign, we can look both ways. We don't walk to the corner of the street and go, all right, now I need to get myself into a good, healthy state of panic. I need to be sweating profusely and my heart pounding. Okay, now I'll look both ways and make sure I don't step out into traffic. We can make good choices to keep ourselves safe while also having a very healthy sense of serenity in our bodies. So allowing ourselves to recognize that what happened in the past, that's what happened in the past. It's not who I am now. I have more wisdom now. I have more resources now. And so now I can allow myself to experience more of what life might have to offer.
I love that. I love the way that sounds, because I do feel that with this experience, anxiety and depression are a huge part of what holds us back from living fulfilled lives, or like the aftermath of what we've been through. And anxiety and depression is a big part of that, which also brings me to stored trauma in the body. I had an experience, and I want to ask you this because I'm unfamiliar, so I'm curious if it has
Mhm.
a similar effect. I've never really been a yoga person, and I like more like high impact reading and doing all of that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. But I've recently have gotten into yoga, and one day when I was doing a lot of hip openers, I had a trauma release, and I never heard of that before, and I just cried for hours, and then afterwards it was euphoria. And that's what they were saying. It was stored trauma in the body. And because of these different movements that I was doing, it released trauma. Does tapping have any kind of effect like that on stored trauma in the body?
Yeah, I'm. You probably are familiar with the work of Bessel van der Kolk.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Yeah, that's the body key. Yeah.
the body keeps the score,
Hmm.
and so it is held in there because it's energy, and we hold it in different places, and so that's why having a therapeutic tool with a somatic component, with a physical component, is so beneficial, because we're able to access where that is stored, and be able to shift that. So yeah, as we're going through the tapping and working with the energy in our body, we're able to release that. And it's often like peeling layers of the onion, and that stuff comes up, and we're able to then deal with it in a much healthier way.
Mm.
Now, it's like it's like cleaning up our room and finding where we've swept dirt under the rug, and it's like, oh, okay. And the tapping allows us to go places that we may not have gone before. Part of us says, nope, don't go there, don't look, because if I look at that, I'll expose myself to danger, and I need to not do that. And as we're tapping along and clearing out that stress, we start to feel safer. However, if we suspect or know that when I lift the rug, it's not just some dirt that's under there, there's barrels of toxic waste under there. That's why it's very helpful to work with a professional. So I am a big proponent of working with a counselor and not saying, "Hey, traumatic abuse. I can just go whip this up myself." And it's like, there are places we want to go, and we want to have someone with us to hold our hand and guide us through the process. Now,
Yeah.
that being said, with tapping, we can allow ourselves to take the edge off, and maybe get a lot of benefit without going right into it. So not digging deep into the issue. There's a thing called tearless trauma technique in EFT, where we come at it from a very safe distance, but we can allow ourselves to start clearing out the discomfort that's in the body right now. And we want to be careful about how we do that, and where we go with that. But when we do feel triggered by things, it's great to have a simple tool to be able to start taking the edge off, because we may not be able to call someone right away and say, "Hey, I'm being triggered right now. I need to get a therapy session at the moment." But to allow ourselves to at least calm down, and find some sense of peace until we're able to dig deeper on what's going on there.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I like about it so much too, is how accessible it is. You don't need anything and that's really important. Like you said, if you're out and about and you're experiencing a trigger, you don't have time to go run home and get your yoga mat, or, do all of these other things. You can just,
Right.
if you're not comfortable doing it in front of other people, you can go right into the restroom and practice it there. So it's a great grounding technique for those periods of time where, you can't really get away or go somewhere else. All of that being said, you guys, Brad wants to do an exercise with us for tapping. So I suggest it. I have, we have a lot of people that write in, and we talk about triggers all the time. And one of the questions is, how do I ground myself during a trigger? And this is probably all of our daily experiences. So I thought that this would be a really great tapping exercise to go through. So we're actually going to go through the whole tutorial, and you'll have access to that. So if it works well for you, you can come back and watch it anytime. You can also go over to Brad's channel and check out some of his other videos. Or I know you said that you had some videos on trauma release too. I think trauma release, I saw PTSD, anxiety, depression, all of those things.
Shame about having been abused. There's a number of different things around the issues that can come up around that, those kind of experiences.
So how do you recommend we get started here? I'm really excited for this.
Well, so I'll take you all through a brief tutorial in case you're not familiar with tapping. And then because if I go into it the way that I do it, some people say, well, that's really complicated. You have to come up with all these things to say, and you don't. It's just the way that I like to do it. So I'll show you the very quick form, what we call EFT in a nutshell, that you can then use for yourself. And then we'll have some fun with it.
Okay.
Having fun with trauma. So,
welcome to my world.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're going to do is take the fingertips of your index and middle finger on your dominant hand and gently tap on the edge of your opposite hand. So right between your wrist and your pinky.
Okay.
And this is where we do what's called the setup statement. So you take whatever the issue might be. So for instance, just simply saying, I'm feeling some stress right now. We'd say on a scale of 0 to 10, how stressful do I feel? And what's the physical component that I'm aware of? So maybe it feels like an 8 right now, and I feel a lot of tension in my shoulders. So we tap the side of the hand and say, even though I feel this stress, I choose to love and accept myself. We'd repeat that 3 times. And then we would go through these different points. Right here at the beginning of your eyebrow, we'd say all this stress. Right here at the side of your eye, all this stress. Right under the middle of your eye. And we're tapping each of these points, usually between 5 and 10 times, but it's not an exact science. If we say a longer phrase, it might be 20 times. And it's not like, oh, now you've gone too many times. Now the healing will.
Or if you need some extra that day.
And you may find as you're tapping through the points, you may feel like stopping on a particular point.
Yeah, I felt like it felt really, really great right here. For some reason.
And this is the stomach meridian, which is generally associated with fear. And fear is pretty much underneath all of the uncomfortable emotions that we experience. Then we tap right under the nose, say all the stress, right under the lower lip, above the chin, all the stress. Now, right here where your collarbones just about come together, it's a little bit of a U shape at the base of your throat. And you can tap with all your fingertips or even make a fist. All the stress.
It's very Tarzan.
Yeah. Well, and there's this thymus area that a lot of people use in other tapping methods, and you can, which is even further down, is even more of that Tarzan thing, and all kinds of benefits to that. Next point is about 4 inches below the armpit. So it's right about bra strap level. I'm sure even the guys can figure out where that is. And finally, the top of the head. So with all your fingertips tapping around the top of your head, all this stress. And you take a deep breath. And then you would check again. It's like, okay, how are my shoulders feeling? What does my stress level feel like? Sometimes it'll go from an 8 to a 0 like that. Sometimes it'll go from an 8 to a 7.75. Which if you've been in an 8 for longer than you've actually been allowed yourself to be aware of, a 7.75 might feel like a lot of release. And it's often like peeling layers of the onion. So you might get more clear about, oh, it's not stress, it's fear, even though I have all this fear. And you can just use the same word over and over. That is the basic version of EFT. Now you know it. So, and again, you could feel free to tap any of those points. And if you're in a public situation where I don't want to be tapping, you could be holding those points or rubbing them.
And just like,
and you're standing out on the street in New York and doing this, no one's even going to notice. So let's go through the tapping process, and we'll address this issue of getting grounded. So what I'd like everyone to do is go ahead and close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and hold it. And let it go. And just allow yourself to be aware of how grounded you might feel right now. So oftentimes when we use the 0 to 10 scale, we use it as 10 is the most upset that we can be. We're going to flip that around. So 10 would be the most grounded you could be at the moment. So we'll make it a positive scale. So on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being I am centered and grounded. I am right here feeling strong and powerful in my body. Don't judge yourself harshly if the number is lower than you'd like it to be. Just allow yourself to be aware of that.
Did you sense that?
Yeah. And, maybe allow yourself to be aware of any thoughts, beliefs, or memories that might be coming up that are, pulling the rug out from under your feet and making you feel a little less grounded. Maybe a thought about why it wouldn't be safe to feel grounded. It's like, oh, if you feel grounded, then you might put yourself in harm's way. If I feel a little shaky, I'm much more likely to pay attention. So all of these things are designed to protect us. Just allow yourself to be aware of those things. And let's go ahead and tap along. Just tap where I'm tapping and repeat back what I say. And we'll see what happens. And again, this is, similar wording or similar thoughts that you can use in a moment that comes up where you might feel triggered and want to feel more grounded. Even though I'm not as grounded as I'd like to be.
Even though I'm not as grounded as I'd like to be.
I choose to love and accept myself anyway.
I choose to love and accept myself anyway.
Even though I'm not as grounded as I'd like to be.
Even though I'm not as grounded as I'd like to be.
I choose to love and honor myself anyway.
I choose to love and honor myself anyway.
Even though I'm not as grounded as I'd like to be.
Even though I'm not as grounded as I'd like to be.
I'd like to feel more centered.
I'd like to feel more centered.
I'd like to feel more present.
I'd like to feel more present.
Because then I can feel more powerful.
Because then I can feel more powerful.
But sometimes there's a part of me.
But sometimes there's a part of me.
That says the present might not be safe.
And that says the present might not be safe.
So let's not entirely be here.
So let's not entirely be here.
And even though I'm not as grounded as I'd like to be.
And even though I'm not as grounded as I'd like to be.
I choose to deeply and completely.
I choose to deeply and completely.
Love, honor, and accept myself.
Love, honor, and accept myself.
And maybe anyone else involved.
And maybe anyone else involved.
Because I choose to be that free.
Because I choose to be that free.
All these things that keep me from feeling grounded.
All of these things that keep me from feeling grounded.
All of these thoughts that stop me from feeling more centered.
All of these thoughts that stop me from feeling centered.
All this stuff that gets in my way.
All this stuff that gets in my way.
All the stuff that keeps me off balance.
All the stuff that keeps me off balance.
And it's not because I'm bad or stupid.
And it's not because I'm bad or stupid.
It's not that I'm weak or lazy or defective.
It's not that I'm weak or lazy or defective.
It's just that part of me is saying.
It's just that part of me is saying.
I don't feel safe being present.
I don't feel safe being present.
I don't feel safe being here right now.
I don't feel safe being here right now.
And that part of me is trying to take care of me.
And that part of me is trying to take care of me.
Part of me is saying.
Part of me is saying.
I've been hurt in the past.
I've been hurt in the past.
And maybe I would have been safe if I hadn't been there.
And maybe I would have been safe if I hadn't been there.
So let's not be here right now.
So let's not be here right now.
Part of me is trying to be someplace else.
Part of me is trying to be someplace else.
Because it feels like that might be safer.
Because it feels like that might be safer.
And I love and appreciate those parts of me.
And I love and appreciate those parts of me.
That are trying to run away.
That are trying to run away.
To keep me safe.
To keep me safe.
I'm also allowing myself to know.
I'm also allowing myself to know.
That if I allow myself to be more grounded.
That if I allow myself to be more grounded.
I can be more powerful.
I can be more powerful.
I can make better choices.
I can make better choices.
And that might be safer.
And that might be safer.
I love and appreciate those parts of me
I love and appreciate those parts of me
that are trying to keep me safe
that are trying to keep me safe
based on old, outdated programming.
based on all the outdated programming.
And I've been doing the best I could
And I've been doing the best I could
with what I learned.
with what I learned.
Some of that's not working for me anymore.
Some of that's not working for me anymore.
And I'm allowing myself to feel more centered and grounded
And I'm allowing myself to feel more centered and grounded
so that I can stand in my power.
so that I can stand in my power.
I'm releasing the fears
I'm releasing the fears
that have stopped me from feeling centered and grounded
that have stopped me from feeling centered and grounded
so that I have the freedom to be here.
so I have the freedom to be here.
And not only is that a better way to protect myself,
And not only is that a better way to protect myself,
it's a better way to create the life that I really want.
it's a better way to create the life that I really want.
And nothing is too good for me.
And nothing is too good for me.
So I'm allowing myself to feel more centered and grounded
So I'm allowing myself to feel more centered and grounded
in body, mind, and spirit.
in body, mind, and spirit.
And take a deep breath. With your eyes closed, go ahead and check through your body how centered and grounded you feel. And again, rate that on a scale of 0 to 10. 10 being totally solid, and just see what that feels like. And hopefully that number has come up. For some, it'll come way up. For some, it might be more gradual. And as I was saying earlier, it's this thing of peeling the layers of the onion. You might become more aware of, oh, here's something that I've been trying to avoid. And that's why I'm not allowing myself to feel centered and grounded. And then you can do some more specific tapping on that.
Yeah, I would say I went from about a 5 to 7.5.
Nice.
It's pretty good. It's
Probably
pretty
feels
good.
better.
Yeah, I usually have a lot of anxiety anytime I'm doing something new or meeting some general anxiety. So it really did help me feel calm again. And this is an exercise that any of you who are tuning in, you can come back and redo anytime you need to, anytime you feel triggered, anytime you need some grounding. And if you're having anything else different that's going on, you can go over to Brad's channel and see if there are any other exercises that apply.
And again, I encourage folks, don't wait to use tapping only when you need it. I also have had struggles with generalized anxiety. And so I tap first thing in the morning, even though I'm not aware of anything bothering me. I just do some tapping. It's like, I want to be as present as possible so I can do as much good as I can today, so I can enjoy life as much as I can today. So even before, I don't want to wait until I'm aware of it. And allow yourself to feel as free as possible to enjoy the life you deserve.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that too, because I feel like once you're in it, sometimes there's no going back at that point.
Right.
And just for anyone who's listening, one of the things that helps me a lot is that I have a go-to list of self-care grounding techniques, and that, I mean, it's very easily like written out on a piece of paper or a list on my computer, and it sounds very simple, but if you're in the moment, sometimes your brain can't really comprehend what to do next. So Brad's tapping method is on that list now. I highly recommend doing that. So if you're in the moment, you can just look and say, okay, that's what I need right now. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I've recommended that to a number of people. Have a list of self-care things. It doesn't, tapping is my go-to thing, but there are all kinds of different ways that people have to make themselves feel better. And having a reminder so that in that moment, it's like, oh, I'm not feeling good. What do I do? It's like, oh, right, I have a list.
Don't even have to think about it. And it could be a very long list too. Sometimes people have a couple of methods that work for them, and sometimes a whole bunch, whatever works for you in that moment. Brad, it was so great to have you on. We're so grateful that you came on and you introduced us to the tapping technique to help us with all of these different healing modalities that we're trying to learn and trying to get out there so we can help our community. So incredibly grateful for having you on.
Well, thanks, Kelly. I appreciate this opportunity to share this work. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. And for anyone tuning in, you can find Brad at tapwithbrad.com. You can also find his YouTube page by searching Brad Yates or Tap with Brad. He has hundreds upon hundreds of EFT tapping exercises for you to try. He's also on Facebook, Twitter, and IG. I'll put all of those links down below in the description. Also, if you would like to purchase any of Brad's books, I'm also going to leave links to where you can purchase them on Amazon down below. But please note that these are affiliate links. So if you purchase through these links, you will actually be supporting survivors as well. So you'll get to not only support Brad, read some great books, but you get to support survivors at the same time.
Win-win-win situation. I love it.
All across the board, across the board.
Everybody wins.
Everybody wins. Brad, thanks again so much for joining us and introducing our community to the wonderful world of tapping. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Until next time.